For those of you who have been in pelvic health for years, do you ever look back on where your journey started? Do you think about the impact you've had? For those of you just starting out, do you ever wonder where your journey will lead? Well, in today's episode, I share my history of becoming a pelvic health physical therapist. Listen in to hear my journey, which ended up leading me to found the Institute for Birth Healing.
Hello, friends. This is Lynn Schulte, and you are listening to the Birth Healing Summit podcast. We are here for meaningful conversations that will transform the way you work with pregnant and postpartum clients. Whether it is a new perspective, tool, or technique, you'll be able to implement it into your practice today. I invite you to sit back, listen with an open mind, and grab the golden nugget today's guest has to offer. Now let's get started.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to this episode. And today I thought I'd get a little personal. I hear from some students sometimes that come to a live course and I was like, I feel like I already know you. And so I know I've shared some personal things throughout the years. And I thought it might be, I don't know, I wanted to just let you know more about me and who I am and how I got to be where I am and what I'm doing today. So I'm going to dive into my life history. Hope it's not too boring for you, but I was born and raised in Florissant, Missouri, which is just outside of St. Louis. And I am the middle child of three. So I have older brother and younger sister, and I was the peacekeeper of the family. I'm sure some of you can relate to that. And I did grow up with an alcoholic dad and a codependent mom. And so it created a lot of dysfunction. I'm sure everybody has dysfunction in their family. And so yeah, I grew up in Midwest, so everything stuffed underneath the rugs, all emotions. We never addressed anything, never really talked too much about what was bothering us. So that was my history. I grew up playing sports, and I have to say that my parents have their dysfunctions, but boy, were they supportive of us. They came to every single tennis match I played. Growing up, I did softball, soccer, basketball. In high school, they were at every single tennis match I played, every single soccer match and basketball game that I played in. They were there. They were the staples. I could always count on them showing up. Luckily they had flexible jobs so that they had the opportunity to come in and watch us. And I have to say, there's something about having your parents show up and be supportive of what it is that you're doing in the world. So that was incredible. And let's see, so in high school, I played those three sports and I went to state in every single sport I played. My doubles partner in tennis and I went to state. We lost in the first round, but it was still fun. And when we were there, she's like, oh my gosh, wouldn't this be great if we came back here in basketball? We were both on the basketball team together. And we did, and we won. So that was incredible. I have a longer story about basketball. If you guys are a fan, reach out. I'll share that if you ever meet me at some day. But a fun story about our basketball finals and the serendipity, the synchronicity of it, I guess. And then I went away to college. So my mom's a nurse, and I knew that I wanted to help people. And I knew I wanted to be in healthcare, but I knew I didn't want to be a doctor. And I knew I didn't want to be a nurse. And a family friend's daughter, who was just a couple of years older than I, was going to PT school. And I'm like, well, what's that? I remember sitting around my kitchen table growing up, and she was there and she was talking about physical therapy. And I was like, she told me all about it. And I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. And so my mom took me to the hospital and I volunteered in the rehab center at her hospital, and I fell in love with that. I'm like, yes, this is what I want to do. And so I knew in high school that PT was my plan. And when I was applying to PT schools, I knew that there were some schools where you go for 2 years and then you apply to try to get in. And I knew I didn't want to do that. And so St. Louis University offered a freshman level entry into their PT program. So I applied to that, got in right away. But I grew up in St. Louis and I didn't really want to stay in St. Louis. I wanted to go explore. I'm an adventurer. And I didn't find out that Marquette University up in Milwaukee actually had a freshman entry level program as well. So when I found out, I applied, but it was too late. They had already gotten their their students admitted. So my co-captain of my basketball team actually went to Marquette, though. So I wasn't meant to go there. I went to St. Louis University, had the time of my life in college, and it was tough studying. As we all know, PT school and occupational therapy school is intense. But I had a great time, met some really wonderful friends in that, and became a PT. And after college, I backpacked through Europe for 6 weeks, and with two of my other PT colleagues, students that went to the program with me, and we had a ball. It was so much fun traveling around and seeing all of Europe. I absolutely loved it. I came back from that and I started a job working in St. Louis. So I applied around and I actually flew out to Denver and interviewed at a hospital in Denver. Funny enough, because that's where I currently live, or outside of there, I do. But it didn't feel right. So I stayed at home and I worked at home at the hospital. I lived at home while I worked at the hospital. And in that hospital, my very first job as a PT was, working in the hospital, doing acute care. We had a rehab center. We had an outpatient center. So I got to do a little bit of everything while I worked there. And I was there for about 7, 8 months. And then I met a friend of mine. So one of my backpacking buddies worked at a hospital in downtown at Barnes Hospital in St. Louis. And she had an OT friend, Janet, who backpacked through the South Pacific. And we met at happy hour. Happy hours are huge in St. Louis, and they were fun to go to after work. And Janet and I met at a happy hour one day, and we were kindred spirits because I had backpacked through Europe. She had backpacked through the South Pacific. And you got to understand, in St. Louis, you tell people that you're doing this, and it's like, wait a minute, like, how many underwear do you take with you when you do something like that? It's just not in their wheelhouse or in their mindset that you should go do something like that. So Janet, I was working at the hospital, living at home, and Janet called me up one day and she asked me if I wanted to sublease her apartment. And I was like, why? What are you going to go do? And she goes, well, I want to go do travel therapy. And I go, no, I want to go with you. So Janet and I started looking at options outside of St. Louis, and she wanted to go somewhere where she could go sailing. So we were looking on the East Coast, but and I'm like, I don't care where we go. I just want to go explore and have fun. So we were looking on the East Coast, and then she found a company in Seattle that was doing temp work, and there was an OT registry and a PT registry. So she calls me up one day and she says, Lynn, what do you think about Seattle? And I was like, wait a minute. And I was in my dad's office. This is way before the internet, phones, cell phones, all this kind of stuff, guys. And I got out the atlas and I looked at the map of the United States and I looked at where St. Louis was and I looked at where Seattle was. And I'm like, whoa, that's far. But then I looked around Seattle and saw all the mountains and water and everything. And I go, oh my gosh, that looks amazing. Let's go. So we both got jobs over the phone and we packed up our cars and we drove cross country. And we landed in Seattle. We ended up staying with her boss for a week until we found our apartment. We furnished our own apartment, lived together for a year, and then she ended up getting married and I moved out into my own. I bought my first condo in Seattle. And that is where I met my future husband. And we ended up getting married, buying a house there. And I was working, let's see, I was doing all the temp work. So going around and working for all different kinds of companies and doing temp work, filling in for vacations and maternity leaves and things like that. And they asked me if I wanted to work in a nursing home. And I was just like, oh, I don't know. Because being an athlete, I always thought in physical therapy that I would go into sports med and go work with all the athletes and everything. And so doing nursing home stuff, I wasn't quite sure, but I went in there, and after my first week, I absolutely loved and fell in love with the elderly and the patients there and that work. And so I got an assignment at First Hill Care Center up in First Hill in Seattle. And I worked there as a PT, and then they hired me on, and I actually took a full-time job with them, and I became the PT director of the nursing home, and I did that until uh, 1998, when So before 1998, nursing homes were reimbursed with as much of units as you could produce, you would get reimbursed that. So it behooved a rehab center to have a lot of staff, and we had 32 rehab staff until mid 1998 when they changed the reimbursement and they only reimbursed per diagnosis. We went from a rehab staff of 32 down to 6. And this is right around the time that I was getting married. It was like a couple of weeks before I was getting married. And I decided that I didn't want to stay on as just a staff PT anymore. And so I let another staff person take my spot and I quit and got a job for therapeutic associates starting women's health program. So during that time being in that nursing home, I took some courses I took a Jerry Hesh course on the pelvis and the sacroiliac joint and absolutely loved that approach. And then in the nursing home, I was learning about incontinence and we were trying to help implement some programs there. And so taking this job as a women's health physical therapist seemed right up my alley. And they wanted me to start a program in 3 of their different clinics. So that was 3 days a week that I was going to be working. So then I took on a job at doing home health and did that 2 days a week. So that's what I was doing when I got married. And then I shortly became pregnant with my first child. And I decided to stop doing the home health. And I went down to just 2 days a week after he was born. And I was still doing the women's health program. And I did that I was probably with him for about 5 years. My kids were like 2 and 4 when I went to my boss and I'm like, okay, I want to make more money. Like, hey, give me a raise. And he looked at me and goes, Lynn, you're at the top of the pay scale. You'll never make any more money at this clinic or with this company. You need to start your own practice. And I was just like, but I can't. I've got 2 young kids at home. How could I start my own practice and all this? I can't, I can't, I can't. And my husband at the time found this T. Harv Eker personal empowerment kind of seminar that was happening in Seattle. And we both went to it. And one of the things that we did was we broke a board. And on the board, we wrote on one side what our limiting belief was. And then on the other side, what we were wanting to change that to. And I broke through I can't to I can. And I came home from that seminar and I started my own practice. That was back in 2000 or probably around 2000, 2002 was when I started my own practice in Seattle. And I was doing women's health. And I also started taking prior to dating my husband, I was living with a PT who was living with me when I bought my first condo. And Carol introduced me to craniosacral therapy. And so I started taking craniosacral therapy classes because I thought it was fascinating. And then I just had a knowingness like this. I heard about they were advertising their visceral manipulation classes. And there was just this knowing like I need to learn this. And so I started taking some of the visceral manipulation courses. And that's when I met my good friend Heather Hannum down in Portland. She would come up and stay with me while we took the visceral courses together. So we kind of took 1, 2, and 3, and however many we took together. But that's how we became really good friends. And I was, I think, in the Seattle area back in the 2000s. I was the only one who was combining pelvic health and visceral manipulation in that area. And oh, I forgot to mention that I got into women's health when I joined Therapeutic Associates. They hired me on to start their women's health program in these clinics because Kathy Wallace was already working for them in one of their clinics. So Kathy Wallace personally trained me one-on-one in learning internal work. So that was kind of cool. And so Kathy and I have been friends over the years, and that's been a wonderful friendship. And so now back ahead, I am starting my own practice and combining both women's health and visceral manipulation, and had a great practice at my home. But then we moved to Boulder, Colorado. And so I had to start all over again. And when I moved to Boulder, I thought I had this unique thing. And I was meeting people and talking to them. And we're like, yeah, well, I combine these two. And I heard someone say, yeah, there's 5 other people in this area that do that. And I was just like, oh, okay, I guess I'm not special. So Boulder is a very unique place to work because there is everything here. It's a great place to get sick or hurt because there is a lot of different modalities and people that do different things. So it's a great place to try new things. So I had to start my own practice again, and I was trying to get the word out, network, and find things. And I met the owner of a maternity store, Stephanie, and she let people come in and give lectures to. She would promote it to her customer base. And it's funny, when I first reached out to her, she never got back in touch with me. And it took almost like 9 months for me to hear from her. But in that 9 months, she met Julie Tupler. And so there, you guys don't push things. When something's meant to happen, it happens in the direct in divine timing so that it works for your good. Because had I met her earlier, it wouldn't have unfolded the way that it did. Because when I met her, she had just gotten back from a conference where she met Julie Tupler. And so when I met Stephanie, she's like, "Oh, do you know about this Tupler gal?" And I'm like, "No." And she goes, "Oh, well, here's a, DVD she gave me." And so I watched it and I really liked her approach. I wasn't keen on everything that she had to say, but I liked her approach and it made sense to me. And so I put together a class teaching moms about recovering their belly after birth. And that is what started my practice here. And that's what got me busy seeing clients here in my own practice in Boulder. And I started, so I'm building my practice and I'm seeing clients and really seeing the postpartum clients. And that's how I discovered all the patterns that I was finding in the body. But one thing that happened in that process is I took a phone call one day and a gal asked me, she goes, "Do you do vaginal massage?" And I go, "Well, yeah, I guess. I don't really call it that. I call it intervaginal work." And, we've never used that term when we talk about doing intervaginal work. So I get done and I go, "Why do you ask?" And she goes, "Well, I'm part of this book club and we're reading this book." And she told me the name of the book. But we kept talking. And then she's like, "Well, I don't think you're the one that's going to help me. Okay, see you, bye." And I was like, "Oh, darn, I forgot to get the name of that book." Well, 2 days later, I get another phone call and it's like, "Do you do vaginal massage?" And I go, "Yes. What's the name of the book?" And that was Wild Feminine. And I immediately ordered the book, got the book, started reading it, and just knew in my gut, like I got so excited. It was a deep, deep bliss, excitement, joy from reading that book and understanding the depths of that work. And I immediately went and took one of Tammy's courses and started applying it. And what I realized is that I was already kind of working in that way. I just didn't have it organized in the way that Tammy was teaching it. And so when I took her courses, it just came second nature to me because I was already kind of doing it in that way to begin with. And so, when Tammy came up with her second course, I took that one and just really started implementing that holistic pelvic care, which is amazing, amazing body of work. And then, and actually doing that work and learning about it, I was also working with another acupuncturist. um, I went through a really challenging time where I knew my marriage was over, so went through a divorce. Do not wish that on anybody. It's so challenging, yet it can be so rewarding and so empowering to um, let go of a relationship that's no longer serving you. And when I got through the divorce, I purchased my own home and moved into that, and really it was then right around 2009. Well, no, I got divorced in 2012. But in 2009, I was introduced to Eckankar, which is the religion, or it's the religion of the light and sound of God. And it's a spiritual path to freedom. And interestingly enough, every time I've moved, when I moved from St. Louis to Seattle, I kind of wrote down new life goals of like what I wanted to do. And at that point in time in my path, I wanted to join a Bible study, wanted to read the Bible. I grew up Catholic. And that just wasn't encouraged in that faith, in that path. And so when I moved to Seattle, I'm like, I really want to join a Bible study group. I want to read the Bible. And so I did that in Seattle. Well, when I moved from Seattle to Boulder to Longmont really is where we landed. I kind of had another, my goal was I wanted freedom. I wanted spiritual freedom, financial freedom. Freedom was kind of my word that really stood out to me as I made that big transition. And when I learned or I first found out about Eckankar, their big tagline was like the path to spiritual freedom. And I was just like, ding. and and so I started following that path and got introduced to the Mahanta, who is the spiritual leader of on the inner to so there's Sri Haro Klemp is the outer person who runs and is the spiritual leader for Eckankar, and he writes books and gives talks. But there's also a inner guide who is the Mahanta that can guide you with your dreams and with your like those intuition, those hits. And it was when I got divorced and I moved into my own house and I was working with my postpartum clients that is when, so this is probably 2012 now, that is when I really started to learn more about the postpartum body and see the patterns and know how to work with them. And that's when I got the intuition, like check out the bladder, and all those things started coming through to me really, really strongly at that point in time. And then it was in 2016 that I founded the Institute for Birth Healing. I went through 2 years of massive, massive struggle because as I was working with my postpartum moms, I knew I had all this information, and I put together some videos on how to to help moms recover. And the videos were towards moms. And I had them sitting on my website, but nobody's buying them. So you need to figure out marketing. Like, well, how do I get this out there? And so I took a marketing class from a marketing coach, and I went through her year-long marketing program. And that's when I learned how to do a summit, an online summit. I had done but with that coach, it just didn't feel like what I had created was at the price point that she thought we should be selling at and to be successful, blah, blah, blah. And I kind of went down this path for 2 years of doing more entrepreneurial empowerment work, of helping women connect into their own pelvic space, into their power within them. And I was kind of doing this entrepreneur stuff, but I was also still doing my PT practice. And I had these two completely opposite different businesses that weren't supporting each other. And I actually had a PT take one or two of my online programs that I had created for entrepreneurs. And I was talking to her one day, and this is in October of 2016. And I was talking to her, I was like, I got to find a way to bridge these two. And she's like, Lynn, bring this women's empowerment stuff to your practitioners that you teach about how to help them work with pregnant postpartum women. And the light bulbs went off, and I went, oh my gosh, ding, ding, ding. And what's interesting story is that at that same time, around that same time that I just had this conversation with her, probably 3, 4 weeks prior to this, I had gotten a Facebook message from a gal, Katerina Perkova from Russia, who reached out and was like, oh my gosh, I love your work. I love what you're saying. I want to translate it all into Russia. And I kind of read that and poo-pooed it and said, oh, how much is that going to cost me? And it wasn't until after I had that conversation with that PT and understood how I was to merge these two ideas, these two bodies of work that I was doing and putting out into the world, that I was able to read Katerina's message again. And she was inviting me to come speak at a birth conference that she was putting on in Russia. And so I had that conversation with that PT on Sunday. Monday was when I read the message, and I figured it out and I got it. And as I was talking to that PT, I kept telling her, I was like, I feel like I need to start an institute or something. I need to be teaching like what I know about the pregnant and postpartum body, and I need to start this, my institute, my institute. And she helped me become really clear that I wanted to found, and the words just came in, the Birth Healing Institute for Birth Healing, Birth Healing Institute. Oh my gosh, I kept going back and forth between those. And I founded the Institute for Birth Healing, and uh, she helped me to get clear on that. I named my institute, and the next day is when I was able to read Katerina's message. And we met on Friday, and Friday I was flying to Russia in October. So this is probably August, and in October is when her conference was. So I was flying to Russia in October to give a talk at her conference. And so it just like clicked, fell into place once I got really clear on how to put my work out into the world. And so in 2016, this is very interesting. So in October, I started the Institute for Birth Healing. I did my very first course, October, probably 16th, 17th, or the second weekend of October was when I held my very first course. It was a postpartum course. I tried to jam so much into 2 days. It was way too much. You don't know how to teach until you do it several times. So, but what's interesting about that is 2 weeks prior to me teaching my very first course for the Institute for Birth Healing, my mom got sick. She's had breast cancer for 30 years. And talk about trying to help someone who didn't really want the help that I was willing to offer her. I realized I couldn't help my mom after trying to give her ideas that she kept poo-pooing. My mom ended up passing away 1 week prior to my very first course. And so that was interesting. Going to being flying home, being in the hospital with her for a week, and then she passes. And then the following week, we had her funeral, her wake. Her funeral was on a Friday. That Friday night, I flew home and I was teaching Saturday and Sunday, the very first course for the Institute for Birth Healing. And so that is how the Institute for Birth Healing got started. And it has just continued to evolve and grow as I continue to evolve and grow and as times change. And in 2018, so that was back in 2016. In 2018, my son, who is such a go-getter, he's a senior in high school, he helped me to film every single lab that I teach, and he filmed it, he edited it, and he helped me to put it up online. And in 2018 is when I launched the online portion of my courses, and it's all thanks to him because he's so organized, he's so amazing he's just capable of doing anything and everything he puts his mind to. But he figured out how to edit. He knew how to do it all. And boy, he knows more about pregnancy and postpartum than any other man out there, especially at his age. So Austin is a big piece of helping me to get my work out into the world in the online space. And since then, I think we're now at 7 or 8 courses that we have online. I don't even know the full number, but it has been so fun trying to get this work out into the world in all the different ways. And because I had done that marketing um, program and I learned how to do an online summit. Oh, this is another thing. I love looking back at all, how I feel like spirit tricked me into doing my first birth healing summit in 2017. I had talked to someone. So I started the Institute in this 2016. And then in 2017, I came across a gal in Denver who had an online platform, just kind of giving mom free information, but she wanted to kind of take it to the next level. And we both talked about doing a summit. And so we decided to do the summit together. And the summit is a huge production, especially if it's your first time doing it. It is a lot of work. And so it was not something that I would want to do by myself at that point in time. I did it with another colleague when I did my very first one. And it just helps to spread the workload. So this gal reaches out to me. We decided to do a summit in 2017. Well, about a month in, we had divided up and she was going to do this. And I did know that when we bought the URL for the summit, I'm like, I want to own that. So made sure I bought it. And then a month later, she reaches out to me. She's like, Lynn, I can't do this. And deep down in my knowingness, I knew that I had to do it myself. And so I took it on and I started doing my summits. And really, my intention with the summit was to help get information out there. Because when I first started working with postpartum clients back in 2010, There was nothing on the internet. Julie Tepler's diastasis recti stuff was the only thing that you could find about postpartum healing. And to see 15 years later how much more information is out there, it's incredible to see that growth. But that's how I got tricked into doing my very first Birth Healing Summit. So in 2017, I did it in the fall of 2017. And um, it's funny, I can't even imagine going back and listening to those interviews. But I've definitely gotten better in interviewing people over the years. And then in 2018, I did 2 of them. And I might have done 2 in 17 as well, too. I did in the spring and the fall. And then in 2019 is when I focused just on doing practitioners and not moms. And it's just been amazing. It's been such a beautiful platform for getting information out into the world and sharing it with others, and getting information in about my work out into the world. So I thank you all if you've been a part of those summits and making them so successful over the years. I so appreciate it. And yeah, so that's where I'm at now. I'm loving everything that the Institute is doing and how much we're growing, and reaching the reach that we're getting every year. It continues to grow, and I'm so excited about that, to see the impact that this work is having out into the world, and to hear from the students who have taken my courses and have studied with me, and how successful they have been in growing their practices and being able to support moms in their healing. It just warms my heart, and I'm just so incredibly grateful for the gift that has been given to me, and being able to share it in a way that is so receptive from others, and their ability to get this work out into the world is so just amazing. So I thank you guys, and I hope that was helpful. My current state of life, let's see, it is currently September 20th. My mom's birthday is tomorrow, September 21st, but it's 2024. And my boys are now both graduated from college, and they have starting their own adult lives. And I'm still single. I hope to bring my forever man into my life, the next man into my life, and waiting for that to happen. But other than that, I'm a huge tennis player. I love, love, love playing tennis, and reading, and Netflix, and watching some movies and shows and things like that. So that's how I kind of pass my time these days. And I love travel too. So I am so grateful for those of you bringing me out to your areas, and for those of you that are bringing me to the countries. Next year, I get to go to Australia again. Absolutely love Australia. I'm so excited. I'm going to get to be able to revisit the Great Barrier Reef that I saw 30 years ago. So next September or August, end of August, I'll be there. I'm excited to come to Australia. And so I just am so, so grateful for the opportunities that this work has given me in my life, and the impact that we're able to make together. So thank you all. Thank you so much for being a part of this journey with me, being a part of this community, and really serving moms. So hope that was entertaining. Hope that was helpful. I don't know, but now you really get to know me. So thanks for listening in, everybody, and we will see you all on the next episode. And thank you so much for supporting moms to have smoother births and faster recoveries. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Today's podcast was brought to you by the Institute for Birth Healing. To discover more, visit instituteforbirthhealing.com. To claim $50 off of any online course, use coupon code PODCAST50 at checkout. Till next time, I'm Lynn Schulte, founder of the Institute for Birth Healing.